you are wildly successful and got to your late 40s or like me in your 50s, and you ask yourself, who am I? Today, as we look into self-love, it is important to understand that self-love is our birthright and our legacy. Yet so many of us are struggling with this. Join me today as we discuss and discover loving ourselves and the gift it is to those around us when we do. But most importantly, the gift we give our daughters and our sons as they embark on the adult life path without us. Welcome to Her Second Stage, the podcast dedicated to inspiring successful women in the next stage of their lives. I'm Hilda, and I'm excited to share the lessons I've learned as I transitioned into my second stage. Join me on this exciting journey of sisterhood and remembering who we are at our core. Remember, no matter where you've been, the best is yet to come. Hi, I'm Hilda, and today I'm diving deep into the layers of that matters most in this beautiful second stage of ours. My personal mission is to create and spread love around the world, help people become more human in a world where technology divides us so much. And through the second stage movement, I hope you will help me spread the love so the ripples are felt far and beyond what we can see or imagine. We all have heard the well-known saying, hurt people, but so it's true that love people, but no one is focusing on that. So it all starts with us loving ourselves. I believe I've experienced and I have seen in people I've worked with, when we love ourselves, we help others to love themselves simply because our energy changes and the collective heal and love themselves. That's why today, the topic of self-love and self-care is so important. All of us know it's important, yet we all struggle to embrace it fully. So let's explore. I want to discuss self-love, self-care, how they are similar, how they are different, why we struggle, and most importantly, can we start incorporating both self-love and self-care into our lives. Love for others starts with loving ourselves first. When we love ourselves first, we will be able to give love and acceptance to others, and our reality will mirror this back to us as we receive love back. And then I will need to put the emphasis on receiving, because we cannot fully love ourselves or anyone else for that matter if we haven't learned to receive. Yet, receiving is most women's biggest struggle. I have spoken to so many women, really strong, successful women who still in their late 40s, 50s and beyond struggle with receiving. We can give ourselves all day to others, but we are unable and uncomfortable when we receive back, even sometimes something as small as receiving compliments are making a lot of women uncomfortable. If you find yourself in a place where you struggle to fully accept and love yourself, you are not alone, but it is worth it to work on the aspects that hinders you from doing so. The rewards are truly juicy and delicious. So what does self-love and self-care actually mean? Well, self-care is a term that recently gained traction, and for good reason. It's the tangible actions we take to care for our physical, mental, and emotional health. Think about taking a bubble bath, going for a walk, or even just setting some time to relax with a book. Self-care is anything we do deliberately to take care of ourselves. Self-love, on the other hand, goes a little bit deeper. It's less about the action and more about the mindset and attitude we hold towards ourselves. Self-love is about acceptance, compassion, respect for who we are at our core. It's the foundation that lets us value ourselves enough to engage in meaningful self-care. So self-care is often what and how we do, while self-love is the why. When self-care is rooted in self-love, it becomes more than just a checklist of activities and things that we have to do. It becomes a way we nourish and we affirm our worth. And you might ask yourself, which one do I need to have first? Do I need a self-care first and then self-love? Or do I need to love myself first before I can start self-care? Personally, I believe it doesn't matter. It's the awareness that matters. If you are struggling with self-love and self-compassion by doing the things to self-care first, and you're doing these things consistently over time, you will learn to build love and kindness for yourself. It might feel like a chore in the beginning, one more thing to do in an already busy schedule, and doing something for yourself adds to the busyness. But you'll also be surprised how quickly it shifts into a necessity, especially if it's something you already enjoy and is fun and it is giving you pleasure. A huge clue around self-care is how you feel afterwards. If it feels good and gives you pleasure and joy, you are in the self-care zone. If you are a lucky woman that has been taught as you grew up to love yourself first, then self-care is not even a discussion. It's part of who you are and what you do. But here's the thing. Many women, and I want to almost state most women, especially growing up in the 60s and 70s, find it challenging to practice either self-love or self-care consistently. We were never taught from a young age to mind ourselves, to love ourselves, and that we are the most important person in our lives. Rather, we taught from a young age that being selfless is virtuous, that taking care of others is our purpose. We still live in a society that often celebrates self-sacrifice, especially amongst women. And while these are beautiful qualities, they can leave little room for taking care of ourselves. And as we've never been taught the habits or being modeled the habits of self-care, over time, as we grow up, we start to feel like it's selfish or unnecessary to prioritize our own well-being. We grew up, and from young girl to adult woman, we've got no guidance on how to love ourselves first. And here we find ourselves in our late 40s, 50s, 60s, and we still carry that burden placed on us when we were little girls. We can all name so many examples as early teens and young girls where we had to take care of parents or siblings, or our needs just didn't matter. Although it's not all lost, and the benefit is that we became compassionate to the world, but sadly, often to the detriment of ourselves, as we do not always allow or show compassion to ourselves. Most of us growing up in the 60s and 70s were burdened with this huge sense of responsibility, and that sense of responsibility serves us very well as we went on to build successful careers, families, and identities around those roles that serve others. My sense of responsibility started at the age of 5, when I had to get up and make coffee for my parents and take them coffee in bed. Then at the age of 6, I was responsible to feed breakfast to my 2 sisters, and I was told this is the responsibility of being the eldest kid. And as I carried that burden of responsibility for most of my life, always finding myself having to take care of others. After 4 or 5 decades of being over-responsible, it's especially challenging to shift focus inward. Focusing inward to what's important to us often makes us feel uncomfortable, even indulgent, and in my case, I felt guilty. If we have to be brutally honest, we're not often shown or have never been taught that we're worthy of self-love. As young girls, we were often conditioned to be caregivers, always putting others' needs before ourselves. This expectation of us putting ourselves behind others can be internalized from a very young age, taking in consideration that this is also what probably been modeled to us by our mothers and grandmothers. This conditioning is reinforced by cultural norms and even our media, it's really communicated to us that our worth as women is tied up in our ability to care for others, not ourselves. Now we find ourselves, after decades of raising children, growing our business and career success, and taking care of partners in relationships, we still feel obliged to succumb to society's norms, to take care of others and put ourselves last. Additionally, many women struggle with guilt and shame when they prioritize themselves. A lot of us worries about being seen as selfish or even neglectful. It's probably the worst thing to think that we are selfish the minute we put ourselves first or do something for ourselves. How can self-love be selfish? It's actually vital for you to have huge amounts of self-love to be able to give to everybody else around you. Some other factors determining the ability or inability for self-love is what we've been taught around boundaries, or if we had to deal with codependency and shame. In the world I grew up in, there was no boundaries. And even trying to have boundaries was completely disrespected. So I found myself as an adult not knowing what boundaries are, not knowing how to state my boundaries, or even put my foot down when others crossed my boundaries. Having no boundaries, being codependent, and carrying deep levels of shame hugely influences how we, especially as women, love ourselves and others. I want to encourage you to begin exploring and seeing self-love and self-care as essential, not optional. Self-love and self-care are not luxuries. They're foundations for a healthy, fulfilled life. As you create your second stage of life, loving yourself and caring for yourself should be an integral part of your vision for the future. Some ways to bring more self-love and self-care into our lives is to work on our awareness of where you currently are and to be honest about what is in your way. This will give you the insight into what you've probably been ignoring for a long time, and you can work on that and learn tools to change if you need to. One of the first steps is to acknowledge and question the beliefs you've held about your own worth. If we remember that our brains will only bring us information to support ourselves and our eyes will only see what we are looking for, as per the laws of reality. If you perhaps have been limiting beliefs about your own worth and your own value, you will constantly receive information to confirm that. On the other hand, the same as if you love and care for yourself, more and more situations will show up to confirm that you are worthy of love. It all starts with you and what you believe. You can also do a belief mapping process where you write down a belief about your worthiness to receive love or your worthiness to love yourself. Write down where this belief is from. Is it yours or has it been passed on by others? Does it serve you? Understanding the beliefs you have will be the start to making changes if you so wish. Even though we are successful women and are admired by others for our success, if we cannot experience or giving love to ourselves unconditionally, we might be limiting ourselves in other ways as well. Once you understand your beliefs around your self-worth and your value, the next step is to make a self-care ritual, and make it a ritual, not a chore. Find small ways to nurture yourself every day, whether it's a quiet moment with your favorite tea, a short walk outside, or a few minutes of meditation. These little acts of care are not just breaks from your day. They're a reminder that you matter, that you are worthy to be cared for. And finally, practice self-compassion. Self-love isn't about constantly feeling great about ourselves. It's about treating ourselves kindly even when we don't feel great about ourselves. If you're struggling, if you're tired, or even if you feel like you failed at something, give yourself the same compassion you would have given a close friend. Many of us are struggling with self-love and self-care because we're rewriting old narratives, creating new boundaries, and letting go of beliefs and expectations that's no longer serving us. Just a quick word on the topic of boundaries. I would encourage you to also become aware of those, your absences or your boundaries in your life. It is my experience that many of us in our generation have never been taught boundaries, and if we had boundaries, they were often crossed or disrespected by elders or family members in our lives. If you remember that boundaries are the place where you can love yourself and the other persons at the same time, there's really no option otherwise. As we start thinking about legacy and how we will be remembered and the impact we leave on our loved ones, I want to inspire you by imagining if one aspect of that legacy is self-love and self-acceptance, modeled through how we treat and care for ourselves. When our children or grandchildren look at us, they'll see a woman who values and loves herself, and they will see that aging can become beautiful, wise, and empowering. This perspective shift can become part of your legacy, leaving behind a model for self-love, wholeness, self-respect that resonates long after you're gone. What a gift that is to your next generations. We all have our different life stories and experiences, but I believe all these are for us to create and write our own life story. We all have our different life stories and experiences, but I believe all these are for us to create and write our own life's love story. Loving ourselves leads us to be fully open and fully loving others, and this is how powerful we are as women to heal the world. Thank you for joining me today in this exploration of self-love and self-care. Remember, you're worth the time, the love, and the care it takes to nurture your own heart and soul. Please like and share the podcast with your friends. Reach out to me on social media or visit herssecondstage.com for more information about the community and find some support and tools. Until the next time, keep embracing your second stage of life with all of its beauty and possibility.